Welcome all to video 4 in my series of black and white photo edits of images taken in Cornwall. Today's image I'm going to work on was taken at Whipsiderry Beach, which is northeast of Newquay and very close to Porth Beach. Captured on my Canon 5D Mark III with a 16-35 lens at 16mm f11. Exposure of 6 seconds with a 6-stop ND filter. Great location to visit if you're in Cornwall with lots of potential. Here's the raw capture straight out of camera. Before and after. Okay, let's jump into Lightroom. Okay, software I'm using is Lightroom Classic CC on Photoshop, working on a Mac with a Wacom tablet. Over to my lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. Detail tab, remove all sharpening. Then up to my crop tool, just going to straighten the horizon to about there. That looks okay. Into the basic tab, I just want to neutralize this white balance, so I'm going to grab the picker, go about there where I know it is white, and also the tint. I'm just going to zero that in. Okay, so that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to do some global adjustments on the color image. In my histogram, my highlight alert box is checked. So down to highlights. That recovers a lot of detail in the sky. Raise my shadows to about there. Push my whites as far as I can. They're clipping, so I'll pull them back. And blacks to about there. I just want a crisper image, so I'm going to give it 10 D haze. And I'm going to contrast, and again 10. That's about the point I want to reach. So at this stage I'm going to convert to black and white. There we go. A few more global adjustments. Maybe no, I think shadows are okay. Whites I'll just check, push them a bit more, and then pull them back. Blacks I'm okay with. Down to the black and white color channels, I'll just exaggerate these sliders to see what effect it has. Let's go to blue first, pull that back. Yeah, that gives quite a bit more contrast, so I'll go to about there on the blues. Aqua again, just pull that back to about -22. Yellows, I'm just going to raise those to around about there. And orange, yeah, there is some orange there, so to about there. Okay. And then into my tone curve. Let's just see what medium contrast looks like. I know we've got some very deep shadows here, but when I come to work on the local adjustments, there's plenty of detail inside those shadows, so we'll work on those then. But that's the sort of look I want pre-Photoshop, where we will now go in and clean up the image. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. I'm going to create a duplicate copy, Command J on my keyboard. That's just as a backup. Now let's zoom in to 100%. There we go, spacebar down, drag across. And let's just clean the image up. So up here to my spot healing brush tool, around 50% hardness, 45%, nice soft brush. Left and right bracket keys to adjust the size, and let's work through. This looks a pretty clean image. Just want to clean that up. I don't know whether you can see it. So, and across. Amazing. Not many dust spots or blemishes on this image, which is great. There's just a dust spot there. That's pretty good, actually. Just want to clean that up. Right, now on these high contrast images, what you often find, and I'm hoping you can see it on your screen, is you're often left, like here, there's a very high contrast difference between the cliffs and the sky. You're often left with a bit of a halo around. I'm hoping you can see that on your screen. So this is quite a good method for clearing that up. I'll go into my clone stamp tool. Again, a nice soft feather. Now obviously if I sample there, and flow, I'm going to start off at around 6%, opacity 100%. Sample there and move across. I start affecting, as you can see, the cliffs. So undo that. The way to get around this is come up here into your blend mode and change that to darken. That then won't affect the dark areas that you're cloning. So I can sample here. As you can see, it's not affecting the cliffs at all. This probably isn't the best example, but there is a halo there. And when you blow these images up or print them, it is noticeable. A nice large brush with a good feather helps as well. Down we go. Just reduces the contrast on that edge. And across to the other side. The flow is the key on this. If you had that too high, the adjustment will be too severe. Keep sampling. If I just turn that layer off, you can just see it reduces that edge. So there as well. Nearly done. It isn't that noticeable, this halo, and you're probably going to have trouble seeing it on screen with this video, but believe me, it is there, and this is well worth doing. Okay, that's that done. Full screen. Okay, that's all cleaned up. The halo's dealt with. I'm now going to flatten the image. And then File, Close, and Save to take us back into Lightroom. Okay, let's bring this image to life with some local adjustments. Now, what I want to do is have this area around the rock as the focal point of this image. So I've grabbed a radial filter. The invert box is unchecked. I'm going to give it a decent amount of feather. Drag the filter over there. Overlay mask on. Just increase that a bit. Reposition it to about there. Overlay off. With the invert box unchecked, the effect of the drop in the exposure will be outside of the filter. So let's go to exposure. Start reducing the exposure. And you can see that just highlights that area around the rock. We can move that around to position it to about there. Then click on New. This time I'm going to invert the box, take the feather down to 0, and I want to work on the shadows in this rock. So I'm going to again drag the selection there, overlay mask on, just reduce the size of that, drop it down. Then I'm going to go to range mask. These arrows here, click, and I'm going to go down to luminance. You've got 2 sliders. I'm just going to concentrate on the top slider, which is the range, and drag from the right towards the middle. And you'll see that starts to refine my selection. And that leaves me with a really nice selection just in those shadows. So overlay mask off. And now I'm going to raise the shadows. And you see what a super job that makes. Just to about there. I still want some deepish shadows on the inside of that rock. I'm also going to push up the clarity just to give those rocks some nice detail. So that's that done. Backslash key to just look at the image before and after, before and after. You can see how much better that rock is now. Okay, now I just want to do a bit of work on this sky. So I'm going to grab a gradient filter, hold down my shift key and drag down so that it stays square to the horizon to about there. Overlay mask on. Now again, I want to refine this selection because I just want to make my adjustments in the sky. So I'm going to click on brush and erase. Feather down to 0, auto mask on, so that it will detect contrasty edges. And then just start moving around that cliff. You can see with the auto mask on, it refines that edge really well. Reduce the size of my brush and just go in here. And work my way up the cliff. Right, that's the edges done. So now I can turn off the auto mask, increase the size of my brush, and just clean up the rest of the selection. And that is pretty good. Overlay mask off. And I'm going to increase the dehaze to add some drama and contrast to that sky. So yeah, that makes a nice job of that. I'm going to boost the whites. Remember, I've still got my highlight alert box checked in the histogram. So boost the whites and a little bit more contrast. That's that done. Let's just do a before and after the local adjustments so far. Before, after, before, after. Certainly starts to add more drama to the image. Okay, now I'm going to grab my adjustment brush. Nice feather on it. Just reduce the size a little bit. And what I want to do is just highlight this surf washing around the rock. So I'm going to boost my whites. My flow is down to 50. That will dilute the adjustment. And just start working my way around to about there. Now, if I just turn that off, that adjustment, you can see it's just highlighted that surf around the rock. That's on. Okay, that's enough for that. Now let's go to town on some dodging and burning with my radial filter. Sliders all zeroed in. Feather around about midway. And I'm going to place a radial filter. Oh, and by the way, the invert box is checked again for this, so that the adjustment is inside of the radial filter. Let's boost the whites there and add some clarity so we get more detail in that water. Yeah, that works nicely. Let's highlight some of these diagonals. Boost the whites. And on this side, boost the whites. The surf line on the horizon, I just want to highlight that a bit more. Just drag it below the horizon. And again, boost the whites. And here, where the surf is just catching those cliffs, I want to boost the whites there. And here, whites. There. And just where the water is at the base of the cliffs, I just want more contrast there. So I'm going to boost the whites, but also raise my exposure a little bit there. Okay, just a little bit more white there. Okay, now the sky. I just want to increase the whites in some of these clouds. About there. And here. Right. Let's just do \key, pretty flat before we started to there. Pleased with the way that's coming on. Now I want to raise some of the shadows and get some detail back in these cliffs. I'm okay with this central rock now. So radial filter, invert box checked, good feather. And let's just start raising some of the shadows. See how that just gives it some nice detail. Let's duplicate that filter, right click and duplicate, and then drag it across. I think on that first filter we can just raise the shadows even more. To about there, and stretch that out a bit. To about there. I think that's enough detail on the right hand side. Now let's move over to the left. I just want a shaft of light coming up that cliff. So shadows. Again, it's like going around with a light. It's a really good method of adding some depth and contrast and interest to your image. I think we can just raise the shadows a little bit more there. I'm going to right click and duplicate that selection and drag the duplicated selection to there. Duplicate again and drag it down to there. And then I'm just going to go in there and raise the shadows a little bit as well. And at the top here. Just raise the exposure a little bit. So again, before and after, backslash key. If you look at the cliffs, now one filter, I've just gone down into the water there. So I want to reduce the size of that, take it up, push the shadows a bit more to about there. Just raise the shadows a little bit more on that one. And you see, I think that just gives it enough detail. We want some deep shadows. We don't want to push those too much. It would naturally be dark with the sun being here. And also we've highlighted this area nicely with that first radial filter, which gave us that nice vignette around the image. So I think we'll now go on to some noise reduction. Going 100%. Just a little bit. As I've said before, I like a little bit of grain on my black and white images. And sharpening, I think I will take to around 60. That just sharpens the cliffs up enough. Full screen. And let's mask some of that sharpening out. So Alt key down, masking slider on the sharpening, and just move that across. that just leaves me with the outline of the cliffs, the central rock, and some of the water, the detail in the water, but the sky has not got much sharpening on at all. So let's just have a look at that full screen. F on my keyboard to return. And as I've done before, I like to reduce the size of the image to simulate stepping back. And then twice on my L key for lights out. And I think that's it. Now, with these images, I tend to work on them over a few days. I'll do some adjustments, leave it, come back with fresh eyes, but obviously I've just worked through this image in one go. I always think it helps to come back to the image and just look at it. You'll be surprised what changes that you make having just gone away from it for a while. Anyway, that's the finished image for today, and I hope you like it. Well, that wraps up this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and do consider subscribing should you like to see more. Thank you so much for watching. So it's goodbye from sunny Cornwall.